Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi announced his 10-member provincial cabinet. Lesufi, whose ANC Gauteng chair, appointed 7 key portfolios to fellow co-members of the ANC, excluding the DA, which is the second largest political party in the provincial legislature. The DA declined to take up seats on ANC's terms and opted not to form part of the executive of the Gauteng government of provincial unity. Financial Mail features and cover editor Shirley de Villiers joins us now with more insights on these developments. Shirley, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Interesting developments here in Gauteng. We, I guess, spend so much time focusing on the government of national unity at national level that we didn't think that things could possibly go wrong at provincial level. Well, I guess I didn't.
Yes, I mean, it all kind of went rather smoothly in the end at the national level, and the assumption was that the same would happen at the provincial level, and instead we saw this shift. You know, in the national level, you had a 20 percentage point difference between the ANC and the DA, and the DA still got six cabinet seats in a 32-member cabinet. So the ANC came out with about 60% of the cabinet seats. At the Gauteng level, you had this fallout between the DA and the ANC. And you landed up with the ANC offering the DA 3 positions and wanting 7 for itself. Well, that's what the DA says, that the ANC intended to keep all 7 of those positions for itself. And it wasn't prepared to do that. And this in a province where there was only a 7 percentage point difference between the two parties. The ANC has 28 seats and DA has 22. So it seemed grossly out of kilter with, you know, the kind of breakdown in votes for a 34% party to be making demands like that compared to a 27% party.
Now I must ask you, what this might mean for Gauteng. It means the ANC is essentially in a minority government in Gauteng, and that's something that we possibly haven't seen before.
Well, it speaks to a kind of instability. You know, we have this party that's sitting at 34% of the vote. It's formed this government of provincial unity that gives us 32% of an 8-seat legislature. So it doesn't have a majority in order to pass budget, pass legislature. So it needs to get other parties on board. The DA obviously has decided that it's going to be in opposition. So you do wonder if Panyaza Lesufi is basically relying on the fact that there's these ideological divisions between the DA and the EFF, which means that they're not going to vote together, in contrast to anything he tries to put through. So his policies will go through on default. The problem with that, I think, is, you've seen the EFF, it doesn't always stick to its guns. You saw in Joburg that it decided to vote with the DA. In Nelson Mandela Bay, it's previously voted with the DA. So he's playing a bit of a gamble here in terms of expecting that that he can play them off against each other.
What we also see there, I guess, is the inclusion of Rise Mzansi, the Patriotic Alliance, the IFP in that Gauteng administration. Does that at all do anything for the ANC's case, or maybe even stability?
Look, I mean, together they account for 30% of the seats, so it's not as though they have tremendous power to do anything. But I do think it'll be interesting to see how they use their portfolios, whether there's a refresh in the different portfolios. We've seen the stasis. There's very little moving the needle in Gauteng at the moment. So maybe there's a refresh in the portfolios, and the fact that the ANC is sitting on 34% means that there's more of a chance of there being a shift in the politics.
I think maybe as a Gauteng citizen, what concerns me most here is the fact that at some point we need to pass policies, budgets need to pass, and with 30%, let's say, best case scenario, is that 30%. If we can't move anything forward, Shirley, it just means that this is a province that could be in limbo for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely, and I think it's important to bear in mind that this is the most economically important province in the country. It's 33% of GDP. 33 rand out of every 100 rand produced in South Africa is from Gauteng. It's got 24% of the population. It's got 40% of the taxpayers. It's sitting with a budget of 168 billion. So, it's hugely important for the country, but it's also a province that's sitting with huge problems. You've got collapsing transport, electricity, water infrastructure. It's crime-ridden, and the government so far hasn't been able to move the needle on any of that. So if we're sitting with essentially a lame duck administration, what does it mean for being able to move the province forward and for its own development?
And I think that's also maybe very evident here is that even within the ANC, not everybody's actually bought into the government of national unity. And that's why we are seeing some corners pushing back on, the the consensus and this document that they mentioned to you, the document of intent, I think that they make mention of here, that's supposed to be this document that really shows everybody's intentions and, puts us all in a kind of a common framework. But the fact that Gauteng is kind of pushing back on it, it's possible that they haven't bought in.
Yeah, look, I mean, there was always pushback from the ANC. There were factions in the ANC that would have preferred to work with the EFF. And we've already seen at Gauteng level, leading up to the election in Lesufi's previous administration, that there was a preference for working with the EFF in the metros. So that preference was there already. And I think Lesufi, for some other reason, has just been able to strong-arm his way into making sure that it's been his way or the highway, essentially.
Then I must also ask you about, then the DA as opposition. I'm curious to get your thoughts on what that might look like. I mean, it's not often also that the party that is second highest in terms of votes and so close to number one would then occupy, some sort of opposition and might even be able to pull a majority on the opposition side.
Look, I think it's going to be interesting. I think that this has been good, potentially good for the DA's, for the perspective of the DA, that it looks as though it's taken a principled position in the whole thing, because it suggested a 5-4-1 configuration of government. 5 seats for the ANC, 4 for the DA, and then 1 for a minority party. And that was turned down in favour of the 7-3. So they come out of it looking quite good, I think. How that translates into strategy, look, the DA is happy to be in opposition, at least that's what they say, and they are a strong opposition. So I think particularly in the committees we're going to see some kind of pushback. There's going to be a lot more in terms of oversight. And again, with sitting with a minority government, we're going to see how it goes in terms of passing important legislation.
Well, like I said, as a Gauteng citizen, I am a little bit concerned, Shirley. Thank you for joining us today. And of course, we can catch more on that Financial Mail cover today. That was Shirley de Villiers, features and cover editor for Financial Mail.